Thank you, and that was Paul Quinochet. Now on alto sax, we introduce Marshall Royal, and we do one of Neil Hefti's original things he calls Falling in Love.
Yes, fancy meeting you here. Count Basie, the orchestra. Birdland, right here in New York City. Well, that spotlight falls on three other members of the Count Basie aggregation. Paul Quinochet, Jimmy Wilkins, Marshall Royal, Count in the orchestra, and a little Basie kick.
Anyway, at the end of the interview, he gives her a expensive copy of, facsimile of all of P66, basically, which is that one of the earliest copies of John. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. It is second Monday, so for all you wonderful early morning people who have joined me here at 5 in the morning Eastern time, and if you're in Central or Pacific time, 5 a.m. Pacific, if you're in Central or Eastern, you're a wimp. No, seriously, we love you, and we're just jealous. It's just jealous. It's just jealousy from me that here it's 7 for you or 8 for you. So I hope your weekend was awesome. I had a great weekend. Introduced my kid to kites for the first time. Actually, I did that last week. I just, thought, I don't know, you do that as a parent, right? You're just like, I'm going to go buy a kite, and I'm going to go pick my kid up from school, and I can take him out and fly a kite. But it wasn't a windy day. And so, he's running all over the field to get the kite going. He doesn't know. He thinks it's the greatest thing ever. So we had a windy day Sunday after church, and I still had the kites in the back of the car. So we went out to the park, and he got to see his kite. He's like, Dad, it's so high. It was just awesome to see his face light up. And but he's still running with the kite. I'm like, it's so windy, dude. You can just let that thing go. But now he wants to run. So, all right, you go. Never tell a kid how to play, right? It was awesome. Man, I hope you had a great weekend. And I hope you spent it with people you love and people who love you. Look, we've got a great episode for you here today. We're going to talk about some awesome things. First day of the week. We're going to talk about kind of this idea of hearing each other on some level. So we've titled the show, You've Got a Banana in Your Ear, and you'll just have to wait and see what that's all about, because today we're going to take another step together towards following after Jesus. We're going to follow after Jesus together. Take another. It's second Monday, guys. Give me some slack here. We're just going to take another step together towards following after Jesus. Take it away, Chuck.
And being willing to be less than the least became the greatest of all. Let us imitate him who was King of kings and yet a servant of servants.
The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave.
Would you turn on my microphone, please?
It's right here in the hall closet.
Man, I like that, early 1900s talkie voice. It's right here in the hall closet. I wish I could get away with that and, bring that back. It's kind of fun. Why'd that go away? I don't know. We need to Yeah. All right. Anyway, so are you old enough to remember the banana in your ear episode? There's kind of like, I'm not the biggest fan of what's on PBS lately. Pardon me. I'm not the biggest fan of what's on PBS lately, but the two kind of iconic episodes of Bert and Ernie, You've Got a Banana in Your Ear and Rubber Ducky, of course, because Rubber Ducky, that's just a great song. Catchy, says all the right things. But that episode, if you've got a banana in your ear, Bert's sitting there trying to talk to Ernie, and Ernie, what? I can't hear you. I got a banana in your ear. Really great episode. We're going to talk about what happens when, you got a banana in your ear. All right. Have we said that enough times? Banana in your ear, banana in your ear, banana in your ear. Say that 5 times fast. Okay, look, what are the 3 things? What are the 3 things that we're focused on if we're going to follow after Jesus together and have a good time? If we're not going to have a bad time, and, a bad time of our own making, and we're actually going to be successful at the following after Jesus part, which might give us a bad time in a different way, but in a way that just shines more Jesus into the world. 3 things. That's what we're going to be focused on. We need to, because these are the big problems that we have that have always led to our divisions. We need to have better conversations. And we need to figure out how to answer the question of Jesus together, the question, who is Jesus? And have some way of coming up with the same answer. And we need to fall in love with change. And we need to fall in love with changing our heart and our minds. We love the idea of changing our heart or changing our actions or, seeing others a little bit deeper and stuff. But those verses in the Bible regularly say, change your heart and your mind. Renew your mind. The things you think matter, right? They're not everything, but they matter. So have better conversations. Figure out how to answer the question of Jesus together. We're going to look at that a little bit more on Thursday, and then fall in love with changing our hearts and our minds. So today I want to focus a little bit on having better conversations. And that there's definitely some tact and some skill in that, in some sense, in the sense that, there's practical tips that we can do and ways to say things and how to repeat things back to others. Those are all great. Those are great. But today I want to dig a little bit deeper than that. So look, all of those issues, better conversations, answer the question of Jesus together and have some chance of coming up with the same answer, and fall in love with changing our hearts and minds. Those are all really big, but maybe the biggest one that we suffer from right now is actually not hearing each other. We can't have a good conversation if we can't hear each other, right? We got to hear others. But it's not just hearing, right? I've sat there in I don't know how many conversations with someone who's quiet and just listens, but they're not hearing because they're not understanding. When we say we have to hear people, we have to understand them, not just hear their words and then categorize them somewhere. We have to actually understand the meaning and the person behind what they're saying. And only they can tell us that. We can't sit there and divine that because we understand. That's to stand over someone. Only God sees the heart. We can't go to coffee with our friend and they're sitting there telling us something, and then we understand really what's going on, right? We all love to do that because it allows us to be the better. It allows us to be in the know on someone else's issues, and it allows us to fix them. It allows us to elevate ourselves. And it's funny because we always tend to shift following Jesus to that. Like, come to our church so we can tell you how to live. And what did Jesus do? He washed feet and walked with people and called everyone who followed him joint heirs to the throne. And so sure, some have a gift of leadership or of teaching or of something, but that still doesn't elevate us over each other. We're still all wrestling with following Jesus together. And that idea that I've been following Jesus for 50 years or 60 years or 30 years or whatever the time is, gives me some leg up on someone is a myth. That the leg up that I have is when I humble myself and wash their feet and consider them. All right. So if you're like me, this is maybe the hardest part, to really understand people, because I read a lot. I don't know if I read a lot or listen a lot, but I'm not going to criticize anyone if you say I read that book and really you listened to it. If you listened to the whole thing and you understood it, I don't know how much different that is from reading the words on the page, and I'm not going to be a literary snob there. But I consume a lot of information, and because I don't really love to read. Reading is painful for me. I read the same 3 pages 5 times in a row because my mind just wanders and stuff. So reading is laborious, but I do it, a laborious task for me. I do it because I greatly want to understand what's in a book. And so that's why I choose the books that I read carefully. People will hand me inspirational stuff and it goes really, really low on my list because I'm already really inspired by Jesus, by God. And so I don't need the inspiration as much as I need a different consideration. Anyway, the point is, I'm getting way outside of the point here, but if you know a lot, it's hard to be a listener because people start talking and you already know. It's even harder if you've held all of the various positions on an issue and then finally settled on one. So I've held all the different positions on eschatology or end time stuff. I've at one point held all the different positions and argued for them vehemently. And so when someone else speaks and they have a different view than me, it's really hard not to be a know-it-all. It's really hard not to fix them because they so desperately need my fixing. No, they don't. They really don't. But you just fall into that trap. And so listening becomes more difficult because we already know what someone's going to say, except we don't. Even though we're hearing the same thing over and over and over again, that doesn't mean that we know why they're saying it or the specific nuance that they're trying to communicate. And that's the fallacy that we fall into. Right. I've heard this pitch for Calvinism before. No, let me tell you about Calvinism. Well, are we really sure that that's really what they're going to talk about when they're talking about sovereignty? Maybe we let them finish and then we understand. So I've got a great example for you here, and it might surprise you at who I'm going to use for this example. This is a clip that showed up. It's conservative commentator Ben Shapiro, who's the editor emeritus of the Daily Wire outlet, and he is on Andrew Neil's show before Andrew Neil split and started a conservative outlet called GB News. And so he's on the BBC, and Andrew Neil is not necessarily a MAGA type of guy, but he's definitely a conservative type of person. And Ben Shapiro is appearing on the show to promote his new book, The Right Side of History, which is about Judeo-Christian values and reason and Western success and all of the things. The name of the show is Politics Live. And how they do book interviews there, you'll hear Ben say this later on Reflection, they don't do softball promos. Like, here, when someone comes on their show to promote their book, they don't really get at, why should I read this? Because they want to have more people come on who are famous because that's good for their show. So if you antagonize all your guests, it's a bad business strategy in their mind. But I prefer the BBC way of doing it here in that sense, that never lob someone a softball for a book interview. Anyway, so here's kind of some positions that are relevant for this. Neil is questioning this hardline Georgia heartbeat bill that was going on at the time. And he doesn't like it, and he's pressing Shapiro on it. And pressing Shapiro on kind of past tweets and inflammatory rhetoric. But Neil himself, he's a conservative, but he's kind of pro-choice leaning. All right, now I'm going to give you a warning because the clips I'm going to use this morning, I don't have a great way to edit out, kind of the cable news or the cable TV kind of swear words. So it's not a hard R, but you're gonna hear a couple of words that are not my preferred way of communicating. So if you got kids listening and that kind of DAMN and that kind of thing bugs you, HE double hockey stick, or it offends your sensibilities, maybe turn the volume down. I don't play this because I value those words, but, we live in a world with people, and we can't, part of listening is not editing others, right? And so if I'm at the docks and a bunch of sailors are talking to me, I'm not going to try and chide them for their profanity. I'm going to try and hear their meaning. And so I'm going to ask you to kind of set down any language concerns you have, and hear these guys out. It's not too terrible, but I felt like I should give some kind of a warning because it's not G, it's maybe PG. All right, I want you to hear how this clip. Well, that's not the one that was a perfect transition from the studio, and I'll get to the right clip. There we go.
Why is it that a bill banning abortions after a woman has been pregnant for 6 weeks is not a return to the Dark Ages? What's your answer?
Let's
My
try
answer
this
is
again.
something called.
Why is it that a bill banning abortions after a woman has been pregnant for 6 weeks is not a return to the Dark Ages? What's your answer?
My answer is something called science. Human life exists at conception. It ought to be protected. Now, back to my question to you. You purport to be an objective journalist. BBC purports to be an objective down-the-middle network. It obviously is not. It never has been. And you, as a journalist, are proceeding to call one side of the political aisle ignorant, barbaric, and sending us back to the Dark Ages. Why don't you just say that you're on the left? Is this so hard for you? Why can't you just be honest?
Mr.
Seriously,
Shapiro,
it's a serious question.
Mr. Shapiro, if you only knew how ridiculous that statement is, you wouldn't have said it. I just asked
Really?
you a question.
And I asked you a question, you failed to answer a single one of mine. Frankly, I find this whole thing a waste of time. If you want to read the book and critique the book, why don't you read and critique the book? If you want to critique me, you can think whatever you want of me.
Why don't you just
frankly,
try and
I don't
answer
care.
the
I don't
questions?
frankly give a damn what you think of me since I've never heard of you.
And I've never heard of you until I briefed myself for this. But that's not the issue. You have a
Then
new
why the hell
book
are you
out,
interviewing
and
me,
it's an interesting book. But my point is, your book claims
Well,
that
it'd be nice if
society.
you would quote it from time to time.
Your book is well. Actually, I've done so several times, and I'm about to do so again. If you would let me just finish the question. Your book
frankly, I don't
claims
think
that
this- you know what?
society
Honestly-
is turning
honestly,
its
sir-
back on Judeo-Christian values.
Yeah, this is
What are
considering
those values?
considering
What are the values it's turning its back on?
I'm not inclined to continue an interview with a person as badly motivated as you as an interviewer. So I think we're done here. I appreciate your time.
All right.
Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you for your time and for showing that anger is not part of American political discourse. Now, Mr. Shapiro, we'll say goodbye.
Ouch. And the snark at the end. Man, that was a huge fail from Shapiro. In case you didn't feel that way, I felt that way. Most of the people who watched it felt that way. Quits the interview. Now, we saw a couple of edited clips of that interview. The interview itself was longer, but let me hit Ben Shapiro's immediate reply before the interview aired, and we're going to hear from Shapiro here in a minute afterwards. But Andrew F. Neal, Twitter handle, destroys Ben Shapiro. So that's what that feels like. Smile, winky face, right? Broke my own rule and wasn't properly prepared. I've addressed every single issue he raised before. See below. Still, it's Neal 1, Shapiro 0. So, that was immediately after the interview aired, or it was recorded. They ran an article, and this is from 2019, May of 2019. And so let's kind of apply some empathy here. Well, clearly Shapiro, oftentimes if you watch Shapiro, you might not agree with his position, but he tends to be a pretty adept debate person and pretty clear on the issues. My actual favorite, if I was going to watch Shapiro, I would watch one of his kind of long form Sunday sit downs. I find them a lot more disarming and actually more conversational. But the point is, if you've been on the news and you're a conservative and you go on CNN or you go on NBC or ABC, they do not treat you nicely or fairly. They ask you very difficult questions. They're after you. And we saw this with the Jordan Peterson interview last week, that, the interviewer came with the presupposition that Jordan Peterson is a bad person. And so sometimes the way others treat us affects how we walk into a room. I've been hammered and hammered and hammered and hammered, and now someone wants to bring up Calvinism again. I am just going to hammer you on this. and we just miss the person. You know, it's this issue, this issue, this issue, this issue, this issue. I am done, man. I'm going to let you have it with both barrels. Or I'm going to rage quit. And that's essentially what Shapiro did. I'm out, man. And that's never a good move. So before we move on and I comment more on this, I want you to hear Ben Shapiro's reply to this. And this is on Andrew Friedman, Fridman. I don't know. My friends always send me this guy. I don't really watch him much, but hey, you got to check out this podcast on aliens. And I'm like, by the way, aliens is not my jam. So feel free to send me alien stuff. Love the sci-fi, not interested in the podcast. That's just me. But anyway, let's listen to Ben Shapiro on Lex Fridman's podcast. Fridman? Is that how you say that? I got to Google how you say that thing, right? Anyway, and hear his self-reflection.
You lost your cool in an interview with BBC's Andrew Neil, and you were really honest about it after, which was kind of refreshing and enjoyable. As the internet said, they've never seen anyone lose an interview. So, to me, honestly, it was like seeing like Floyd Mayweather Jr. or somebody like knocked down. What was it? Can you take me through that experience?
Here's that day. That day is I have a book release, didn't get a lot of sleep the night before, and this is the last interview of the day. And it's an interview with BBC. I don't know anything about BBC. I don't watch BBC. I don't know any of the hosts. So we get on the interview, and it's supposed to be about the book. And the host, Andrew Neil, doesn't ask virtually a single question about the book. He just starts reading me bad old tweets, which I hate. I mean, it's annoying and it's stupid, and it's the worst form of interview when somebody just reads you bad old tweets, especially when I've acknowledged bad old tweets before. And so I'm going through the list with him, and this interview was solidly 20 minutes. I mean, it was a long interview. And we get to... and
before we move on there, recognize your self-justification. I do this all the time. Hey, listen, I know I got a little upset at that, but you... self-justification. It may be true what he's saying, and it's tempting not to say that. But every situation is a fresh situation. Every situation is a new situation.
And I make a couple of particularly annoyed mistakes in the interview. So annoyed mistake number one is the ego play, right? So there's a point in the middle of the interview where I say, like, I don't even know who you are, which was true. I didn't know who he was. It turns out he's a very famous person in Britain. And so you can't make that ego play.
But even if he's not famous, that's not...
It doesn't, right? It's a dumb thing to do, and it's an ass thing to do. So so saying that was more just kind of peak and silliness. So that was a mistake.
I enjoyed watching that. It was like, oh, Ben is human.
Yeah, glad somebody enjoyed it. So there's that, and then the other mistake was that I just don't watch enough British TV. So the way that interviews are done there are much more adversarial than American TV. In American TV, if somebody is adversarial with you, you assume that they're a member of the other side. That's typically how it is. And so I'm critiquing some of his questions at the beginning, and I thought that the critique of some of his questions is actually fair. He was asking me about abortion, and I thought he was asking it from a way of framing the question that wasn't accurate. And so I assumed that he was on the left, because again, I'd never heard of him. And so, I mischaracterized him, and I apologize later for mischaracterizing him. We finally go through the interview. It's 20 minutes. He just keeps going with the bad old tweets. And finally, I got up and I took off the microphone and I walked out. And immediately, I knew it was a mistake. Like within 30 seconds at the end of the interview, I knew it was a mistake. And that's why even before the interview came out, I believe I corrected the record that Andrew Neil is not on the left. That's a mistake by me. And then took the hit for a bad interview. And so as far as what I wish I had done differently, I wish I had known who he was. I wish I had done my research. I wish that I had treated it as though there was a possibility that it was going to be more adversarial than it was. Mm-hmm. I think I was incautious about the interview because it was pitched as it's just another book interview, and it wasn't just another book interview. It was treated much more adversarially than that. So I wish that's on me. I got to research the people who are talking to me and watch their shows and learn about that. And then obviously, the kind of gut level appeal to ego or arrogance like that's a bad look, and shouldn't have done that. And losing your cool is always a bad look.
So,
right. Yeah, I thought that was an honest self-reflection. from Ben, and there's a couple things in there that I think are worth pointing out. He elevated himself in terms of position, right? He said, I don't even know who you are. That's an emotional move. It's a power move, and it's not what we do as Christians. Jesus washed feet. He didn't come in and say, well, I'm the Messiah. They had to press him, and when they pressed him, he said, I am. Well, you have said it. But he didn't walk around going, well, look at me, I'm the Messiah. He walks into town as Messiah, and he says, where are the poor people? Where are the hurting? I'm going to go heal them. And I'm not going to walk in and go, behold, your Messiah has come. No, he didn't. He's not that guy, right? That's not how it works. So, sorry, a little distracted. I gotta, my kid gets up about this time, so he's at the door. So, position never benefits us. And this is kind of the number one thing. Just let the truth of God speak for itself and be humble about your position to that truth so that you can shift a little if you need to. You don't need to hold on and defend God. The Bible it's going to inform us of the truth. If we can read it the same way together and find an effective way to read it, then we can humbly appeal. Well, I'm just trying to follow Jesus. Therefore, I read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and these other writings. Matthew seems to be saying this. Can you tell me why he's not? Right? And so then you've got a humble approach. Now, the real issue here, because tons of people have commented on this clip over time. So this is not, this is a clip that's been around the block in the past 7 years or so. But the reason I brought it up is because the real issue underlying why Shapiro failed with Andrew Neil is he had an interaction with a human being and he didn't say, who is this human being? He appeals to that a little bit in his reflection. I didn't know who the guy was. I needed to do my research. But I would say for the follower of Jesus, doesn't matter if they're antagonistic. We got to know who they are. We got to love them. Because, for God so loved the world, that what does Romans say? That, even when we were dead in our sins, Christ came and died for us. And so we have to show other people that same kind of love. So, yes, Shapiro talks about his lack of preparation, but that's not the core. It's about loving others. And this is why Jesus appeals to us to love our enemies, right? And so if we're thinking, I'm going to be talking to another human, who are they and how can I understand them? Now, a lot of times our immediate gut reaction to that is, but what about the Pharisees? Jesus was pretty harsh on the Pharisees. And that's true. But he attacked the Pharisees for what they actually believed and why. He never attacked the Pharisees or the Sadducees or the religious leaders or the scribes or anyone like that. The zealots, whatever. He never attacked them for what they didn't believe. There's never a moment recorded in history where Jesus says, you guys believe this, and they raise their hand and go, that's not what we actually believe. Where are you? And so we like to think that we can hear the words of someone and know what their goal is. Some of us, if you're a very decisive person, you like to put, when options come in, you immediately calendar them. You don't like to live with calendar things in flux. You want to know the dates, you set the times, you schedule things, and you like schedule and order. Oftentimes when people speak, if that's our temperament, we try to jump ahead to what they're trying to do. What are you trying to do with that? Where are you trying to go? That's not listening. Or when people come in, we listen to them, and we hear their words, and then we frame them according to our understanding of the world, and then we judge them according to our understanding of the world, instead of hear them and hear where they're coming from, their understanding of the world. So yes, the Pharisees, but he never attacked what they didn't believe. So would it have been fair for Shapiro to come in and challenge his position on pro-choice? Absolutely. Absolutely fair. But he didn't attack him on that. He attacked him on all these other grounds that were not really fair because they completely missed him. You know, he accuses him of being on the left when really he's kind of a middle of the road conservative. He's a Tory. He started GB News, which is, kind of the conservatives call it the Fox News of Britain, So we want to hear what people are actually saying and get behind it. If we're not doing that, how are we laying our life down like Jesus? So we have to start all of these discussions. We have to walk in initially with a better view of each other. Jesus died for this person. They may have a point. Even if they don't believe in Jesus like me, or there's some other faith or religion, there might be something in what they're saying that God wants me to pay attention to, that God is using to change and challenge me. And I can always compare that against the truth that I find in these 66 writings. But I'm going to come in humbly because God doesn't need me to get in between him and his adversaries in that sense. He can defend himself. He needs me to demonstrate who he is so that his glory shines, not my massive debate skills. All right. So here's kind of the teaching point on this. We got Matthew 22, and let me bring up this verse, Matthew 22, 37 through 40. Maybe let's read this together. And you guys probably know this. This is a memory verse that a lot of people have. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commands. Well, why? Well, God, what's John 3:16? For God so loved the world that he sent his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life in Christ Jesus, right? So this is a foundational Christian truth. That God loved the world, that he sent his Son. And so if we're loving God and we don't love our neighbor, then we're not really loving God, right? Because we don't love what God loves. So we kind of miss the mark there. So how can we love others if we don't have any idea about what they say? When they come and talk to us and we go, yeah, that's non-essential theology, don't worry about it. Yeah, I know that. Or, this again. Or, you're one of those. Or we hear people and we go, oh, yeah. One of the ones I hate the most is give it to God. Never let yourself say, give it to God. I mean, that's just, what the person hears is give it to God, but not to me. I'm tired of hearing your whining and your whinging. Please move on, right? So what happens when we keep the banana in our ear? And why do we do it? Why do we not hear people? Because we can't stand hearing anything that upsets our right to be right about God and the universe. When someone challenges what we believe, and hearing other people's different ideas challenges what we believe. So am I trying to live a transformational life and change? Or am I trying to grab what I can spiritually, hold on to it, and lock it into my heart, and never let God reshape my understanding of him? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. How many times do we just write the word mind out of the scriptures? God, you won't mind if I don't change mine. We've got to change our minds. We've got to reconsider, and we have to continue to do that. And that's what spiritual maturity looks like. Being able to change, being able to transform, being able to be clay in the potter's hand, both spiritually and in our hearts and in our minds. And so Jesus asked us to take the log out of our eyes, and I'm certainly no Jesus, but I might suggest that we also take the banana out of our ears. If we learn to listen to others and truly understand others, what does it cost us? Man, it's a huge blow to our egos, right? And you mean that I have to consider whether or not someone else might be right and I might be wrong? Do you know how much I've studied this theology? Do you know how many books I've read on this? Do you know how many arguments I've won on this? I win every debate on this topic. Who's impressed? God's not impressed. But I can find myself having that heart as a know-it-all because I've held a lot of different positions in the faith. But I could easily switch. You got to work on that muscle. And this muscle is just a muscle that you get into a conversation, and your defensiveness and our defensiveness and my defensiveness keeps me from hearing someone, and it shifts me over to why am I right, even if I'm doing it in a Christian way. So part of following Jesus with others is giving up our right to be right. And that's one of the keys that really helps us hear people on a deep, deep level and consider them. That's really what it's all about. So to truly understand others, it costs us nothing but time, but man, can it be a big blow to our ego. All right, look, that's where my heart is. I know if you're watching this, that's where your heart is. And God, would you reshape all of our hearts and our minds? We just trust you to remake us in your image. Bring about more unity and more peace. Help us get over ourselves and truly hear and listen and truly understand. Not see people as objectives or opportunities to fix. Help us truly, in our heart, lower ourselves so that we can make people feel heard and understood. Make us more like you every day. Amen. Hey, tomorrow we're going to look at some tactics of some things that we can do that are going to help us be better listeners, that are going to help us, when we're having these conversations, be able to walk away and know for certain that we truly have empathized, we truly understand where a person is coming from. All right, so that's kind of the point of today, right? What are the three things? The three things are: we need to have better conversations. We need to have ways of answering the question of Jesus together where we have some sort of chance of winding up at the same conclusion, right? We can't all approach that question different and think we're going to be following Jesus together. We're going to go all our different ways. So better conversations, better way to work on the question of Jesus together. And we have to fall in love with changing our heart and our mind. And to do that, we have to give up our right to be right and really listen to others and lean into those moments. I can't tell you how grateful I am that you're here. It's a massive blessing to me that you would tune in, and I'm thrilled that you guys would watch and care about our unity in Jesus and our unity among followers. I think that this is one of those things that sometimes it takes a minute to fan the flames, but once it gets going, I think that the idea that we should be better listeners and hearers and lean into unity, I think that's going to grow like wildfire. So that's what I'm praying for. I know that's what you're praying for. Look, it wouldn't be a podcast if I didn't remind you about all of the socials. So reach out to me at X. It's Take Up Your X. At Facebook, it is a Jesus Followers Podcast. Instagram, a Jesus Followers Podcast. Rumble, Jesus Follower Podcast. And YouTube is Jesus Follower Channel. So you can find me and find us on all those sources. And man, it's Second Monday, so my brain just fried. But look, consider forwarding this to someone, not because it's the best podcast you've ever heard ever, but because the content, I mean, it's something I truly believe in. I think will really work for us, that I mean, imagine how beautiful it would be if we listened deeply and we truly understood each other. And then we were changing together. You know, sometimes I feel like if you've ever seen a time-lapse video of a flower, it's like it's starting to bloom, it's starting to bloom, it's starting to bloom. What happens if we just kind of froze it at one point? You could still tell it was going to become the flower, but it wouldn't be nearly as pretty as if it fully bloomed. Watching something change, I think it's easier to spot what it's becoming than when it freezes itself at a moment of change. And too often, that's where we're at in our faith communities. We've frozen ourselves in a good moment of time, but we've also, in doing so, to protect orthodoxy or to protect the faith or in some sort of we have to have something to believe kind of thing, we've written change out of the equation. And so the flower never gets to continue blooming. And I think the thing that is the most attractive for people outside of our faith is to see a community of people continue to transform. That every day there's a story, I once was, but now I am. And that's just our day-to-day walk and our day-to-day pace, giving up our right to be right and leaning into a transformational life to be remade in the image of his Son. All right, well, I'm so glad you joined me today. And it truly is my hope that the light of Jesus would shine on all that you do today. Be well.
Yes, you now have a concert side table at the fabulous Blue Note, Madison near Dearborn, Chicago's Mecca for moderns, and for the people who play it that way. Currently, the Blue Note is featuring Count Basie, his famous piano, and his big new band. Yes, it's what you've been waiting for. It's Count Billy Basie, and here's the man himself.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Count Basie and the band. Sincerely, you're going to enjoy. We hope you enjoy our little program, because we're going to have fun working for you. Now, in our first number, we featured Joe Newman on trumpet, Eddie Lockjaw Davis on tenor. A little thing we call the Blee Blop Blues.